Okay.
Perfect. Okay, we're
All
kicking off.
right. Let's start. So, wow, what a start of the meeting tonight. But thank you everyone for your patience and welcome to our February meeting. I hope the week has been treating you well. So the theme of this month's PA general meeting is around mental health and living in this age of social media. We have been deeply impacted by all sorts of social media apps. So tonight we're going to learn about why they're so addictive, so distracting, and how to cope with the challenges. But first of all, first thing first, we're going to get some updates from Dina and then from Mr. Yu. Dina.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience with our technical difficulties again. So very quickly, I'm going to go through this information since we got a late start today. Tomorrow for freshmen on the 26th on Friday, please encourage them to click the link and go to the Big Sib homeroom mix and match to meet up with freshmen and upperclassmen Big Sibs and have some fun together online. So the link for that is in my update on the blog. It's actually on the blog, didn't make it to my update. So if you go to the Talos blog, you'll see at the top, there's a link for freshmen to join at 3 o'clock tomorrow. The recording of the SLT meeting going along with our wellness theme is up on the blog as well. So if you missed the SLT meeting on Tuesday, the topic was mental health of our students. So we encourage you to watch that and catch up if you missed it. And also you received an email shortly after the next morning with a parent survey that we are doing to get your viewpoint in collaboration, myself and the PA, to find a parent viewpoint. So please, it's an important survey. There is an English link and a Chinese link to fill out that survey. So try to fill that out for us by March 10th, please. There's also something new this week is I'm having office hours for parents. I thank the ones that have joined us so far. It's been a nice informal chat. Office hours is from 2:30 to 2:50 every day, just like your children. And we'll try to add some more times that are more convenient for working parents as well. So next week, tomorrow I have a session on the 26th, but next week it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday that I'll hold office hours. So you can try to make that. And it's a recurring link that I will always put in every week's update. And the link is, I'll email it out at the beginning of every week so that you can get that Zoom link. We're going to have 2 sessions of coffee and conversation with Principal Yu. So I'll also be sending out a link to sign up on March 10th and on March 17th. And there will be a Naviance workshop webinar that Mr. L. Wilson, our college counselor, and the Parent Association, myself, are trying to put together. We're going to send out the link next week early. It'll be on March 8th at 6:30, and it's open to all grades parents, and you'll be able to follow along and learn how to use Naviance. And we're going to try and separate that by grade. What's great for 9th, 10th, 11th, and seniors to look at Naviance. And I was going to speak a little bit about parent workshops, but I'm going to let you go to the blog and see that there are some great workshops coming up on calming parent techniques, on improving your relationship with your child. And there's one on ACT versus SAT that is going on this weekend. And it's a free webinar that people can join in. So get those links off the blog, and they're really helpful parent workshops. And I think that I rattled that off pretty quickly. That's about it.
Thank you, Dina. I really appreciate it. So as Dina mentioned, we would love to have your participation in this mental health survey. Both the school and PA we are all committed to supporting the mental health of our students. This is our priority. We can't emphasize enough. So your perspective would really matter. Whether you think there is an issue or not, or if there are any suggestions in terms of how we can better support the students and the families, please do let us know via the survey. Thank you very much. Okay, so next, Mr. Yu, would you like to give us an update?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. And I apologize. I'm probably contributing to the technical difficulties as well. My video, I'm having a little issue there. So hopefully you can just hear my voice, although you may not see my face. Three key announcements building on what Ms. Ingram had made mention and what Connie just mentioned. We're looking at mental health and student well-being. We talked about it at SLT. We continue to talk about it as a school community. So appreciative of all the work that's happening with both the PA and then the work that's happening in the school. One key thing, our departments, academic departments have been meeting. We have been creating a document of all the best practices that we're building in terms of student workload, as well as with socialization and community building. And we're working on this so that we can make it available to our school community so it can showcase all the things that we are doing and will continue to do to really support mental health and student well-being as we move forward throughout the rest of this year, and then ideally as we continue on in subsequent school years. But I'm really proud of the work that's coming out, and so that we can be much more transparent about the things that we really want to emphasize and be able to do to support our young people to have the type of experience we expect of them when they're at Stuyvesant. The second announcement is SAT for our juniors. We are planning to administer the in-school SAT on 3 different dates. So this way that we can administer it safely and be able to get to all the juniors who would like to be able to take the SAT at Stuyvesant. The 3 dates are March 24th, April 13th, and April 27th. We will be sending out more details about how we are going to administer it, and then when the students will be coming in for one of those 3 days. There's still a lot of planning that needs to be done. And regardless of whether or not high schools will be open, we have gotten guidance that if we would like to administer it, then we are able to do so. And so there's going to be a lot of planning that has to be done. But my intent is that we are going to administer the SAT on all 3 of those dates so that we can do and reach all the juniors who would like to sit. And then the third update is around AP schedules. So the College Board provided some flexibilities about when AP examinations would be available. And so we have been constructing a schedule that allows for maximum instructional time so that, again, we can work with our young people to be aptly prepared for the examinations, as well as making sure that, again, we can think about all the different factors or minimizing the factors that might make testing an issue, including devices, as well as, again, any conflicts with other APs, since we have students who are taking multiple exams. We will be getting out that schedule, I think tomorrow, that we will be sharing out with families, students and families, so that you will have an awareness of when these AP examinations will be taking place. And so we will be providing that tomorrow so that you can start making some decisions and or raise questions for us. But we're excited about being able to administer the AP examinations. It is going to be done digitally, but we want to make sure that everyone will have the resources, and we'll be working closely with Ms. Ingram to ensure that students are prepared, as well as having the resources to be able to take those AP examinations. So that is it for me. And again, apologies for my technical difficulties in not being able to show my face, but hopefully you got to hear my voice.
Thank you, Mr. Yu, for the update and for overcoming these technical difficulties. All right, so now after we're done with the school administration updates, we're gonna move on to our PA business updates. And first of all, we're gonna talk about the financial. So I'm gonna share my screen. And Alex, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, absolutely. So the good news, if you look at the total revenue line, as of today, we are ahead of versus where we were last year, which is thank you to all of you for bringing us here. A couple of specific points to make is that we're doing really all your efforts and donations to the annual appeal are really helping to keep our budget in a healthier shape. We are under in terms of our targets for matching gifts. So if your company is eligible, or if your company is matching, please make sure that you submit for that. That will be greatly appreciated. And as you can see, the line where we are significantly under is the line of Spring Feast, or Spring Fest, as we rebranded it this year, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. So we really hope that you will help us making this a success. And of course, Stuy merch, thank you to everyone who has been buying and purchasing on eBay, and huge thank you to our Spiritwear team that is sending the sweatshirts and other merchandise out. So huge thank you. Looking at the expenses, a couple of points to make is that while yes, our expenses during this period are significantly less than what we planned them to be, and that is not because that is just a timing issue. Big part of it is a timing issue, and we actually are having conversations where planning to catch up with administration to make sure that the funds and requests and the invoices are properly submitted. It's just there's a delay in many things, as you can imagine, during this environment. So we'll definitely look. But just to remind everyone, this year we've taken on over 100,000 in additional expenses to cover various systems for school, and all your help, all your donations are working really hard to support our kids, our students, and support the staff. And Connie, if you don't mind just bringing further down to the bottom line. So basically our total revenue is ahead of line. Our expenses are a little bit behind versus what we expected to be. And appropriations, while being approved, there are several because of sports and because of a couple of other conditional approvals. Those are not paid, or they're kind of on reserve. So we are our budget is we have a variance of 135,000. But again, we do anticipate a lot of the invoices to come in, and there is so much more that we need to be spending money on, particularly in anticipation of next year and planning. And the PA is, as I mentioned, is expecting to meet with Principal Yu and Dr. Haber, and to start this conversation, to start what do we need to be thinking of next year, and what is the right target for this year, for where do we need to help and help further. So that's just a brief summary. Please let us know if there are any questions on this.
All right. Thank you. Moving on, I think we're going to have the approval for the minutes that we took last for January.
Yes.
And...
Yes. So we I hope that everyone has had a chance, or has a chance, to view the minutes that were put into the folder and were also sent with your meeting invite. We are going to post a link for the voting, and I would like to have a motion to open it for voting, and hopefully let me just post the link. I think we will have to do it in the new shape and form. I just post the approval form vote form both on YouTube and in the webinar. We're going to take until for the next while, as we're going through other items in our agenda, before the speakers, we'll keep the form open. So please open the form. This form allows you to vote for either for the approval or rejection of the minutes from the last general meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alex. All right, so we're going to move on to the next agenda item. As probably many of you already know, at the beginning of this month, we had our very first Cooking with Stuy. It was really a success, and Scott is going to talk about it, and he's also going to introduce our next Cooking with Stuy. Scott?
Thank you again for everyone that attended on the YouTube that watched the first Cooking with Stuy, the Lunar New Year edition. It was a big success, and due to the big success of Miss Maggio and her mother as the breakout stars, we've decided to have a family edition for this upcoming one on March 13th. And if you want, you can sign up, and they'll be making manicotti, which is one of the family favorites at the Maggios. And we're going to have, once again, Fanny Lauren will be our facilitator, and we're in the process of just securing our a few side families that will participate along. And then you can also, like last time, cook along on YouTube or just follow along. Here's the link, and and you can also sign up. There's through the e-news this weekend on the Stuy Facebook page or Instagram, PA Instagram or Facebook page, as well as the Stuy High School group page. And also keep in mind, in April, as part of Spring Fest Day, there'll be a Baking with Stuy edition that will be baking lemon cake that you can have as a dessert that night. And we'll talk more about that later when we talk about Spring Fest.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. I really enjoyed the first Cooking with Stuy. It was a lot of fun. So now I'm really looking forward to the next one. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about Spring Fest. Alex.
Thank you, Connie. Let me just open form. Let me briefly share my screen. Hopefully I can. Okay, Connie, you will have to do it because I can't. Oh.
You're okay, Alex.
I'm okay? All right. Here it goes. Thank you, Dina. All right. Here it goes. Let me know if you, yeah. So a couple of things I wanted to mention about Spring Fest. So we know it's not a typo. We rebranded it from Spring Feast to Spring Fest because there will be the eating together will be virtual, but there will be a lot of festivities, and they're going through a whole day. So it is going to be a festival, starting with virtual yoga, and I'm going to doing Zumba, and then Bake with Stuy, and then we'll have an opportunity for small group virtual drinks, and then the gala itself with toast, student performances, demonstrations, online auction and live auction, raffle prizes. So a lot. The tickets are up and are open for sale. So please, we'll share the link again, but please consider joining it. This is a great opportunity to be together. And one thing I want to mention is that this is not just an opportunity to see students perform and hear, hear some toasts and hear some good memories and celebrate. It's also a great opportunity to reconnect. A huge thank you to the Health and Safety Committee who've been running the virtual parent meetups. This will be yet another opportunity to meet and see other parents. You can join and connect with freshman parents, sophomore parents, whatever, parents from your grade, or parents from your neighborhood, or parents, math team parents, or swim team, speech and debate, and etc. And it's up to you to, if you would like to form your own group, just let us know. It's all out there, and we really, really would like your help to turn it into great success. So we are relying on you, and there's a great group of volunteers who really wants this to work and be fantastic. I know it's not going to be, well, we hope it's going to be as good as what we've experienced in person, but likely it's going to be different, as was this year. So it's up to all of us to still make it memorable. Things to mention. So what's next? Please do buy your tickets or learn more about Spring Fest. You see, I still can't get it right. Then make sure you find your friends, your other parents, alumni parents, teammates who would like to join you and use that as an opportunity to connect. You sign up for a ticket, we'll take care of the rest. We'll organize, we'll tell you how to join different groups and how to enjoy the event. We promise, and we have a couple of rehearsals coming in, so there's a lot of work ahead of us. Make sure you buy the raffle tickets. Remember the iPhone, the AirPods, the $150 gift card, great prizes. And then pre-order the SpringFest merch. These are, there's a wonderful logo that was designed by our fellow parent, and these masks and these hoodies are all inspired by that. So they're all available for pre-sale, and please order, and we expect to start shipping at the end of March. And again, all the money that you spend doing this, it's not only helping to carry out and support Stuy, but it's all going helping to our bottom line. Remember, this Sunday we actually are kicking off the early auction. So basically, it's going to be a square deal early auction with a lot of great deals. Please stay tuned for the link through the PAE news. The Dina's newsletter will have it. So, and we'll share. You may even get it directly from our distribution list. Last but not least, please make sure that you support the Stuy Giving Tree. So if you receive the parents newsletter this week, there was a feature to talk about supporting science. There are a lot of departments, the clubs that can really use our help. And to be fair, this is the only opportunity during the academic year where you can make a designated contribution that is of size that is relatively affordable and small, because during the usual times, if you would like to make a contribution that goes to a specific cause, the whole donation amount has to be over $2,500. Here, we started literally $25. So, pick the best, what you like, what you support, the club that your student is in, or the department that you feel that can really use some help and help us out. And then we do need volunteers for SpringFest. And I know I keep repeating this, but we still need them. So please consider helping out. So we still soliciting ads and auction items, Zoom support. And even if you just over the next year, you develop those mad Zoom skills, please email us. We need you. We're calling your name. And then video editing, definitely I need help. Help with live auction, tech support. And we also need those creative writers and proofreaders. Have a lot of work ahead of us over the next month and a half. There's a lot for us to do to make this a great success. So there's a link to the forum, and please email at springfest@stuypa.org, or join us in our meeting March 1st. But most important, we would love you to be part of this great event. So you need to get your ticket. You need to find others to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I saw there's a question in the Q&A about the hoodie order. Just wanted to clarify, it's a pre-order. So the hoodies have already been made. They're on their way to us. So as soon as we receive them, we're gonna have it delivered to you. So please expect the delivery at the beginning of April.
So if the hoodies that were ordered, if they were ordered from eBay, then Spirit Wear is the team that needs to be contacted, and I will put their email address into the chat. But if the hoodies that you ordered are with the new bridge design, they are pre-sale. So we will be taking those questions at the end of March once we're going to start delivering. But for now, we just gathering all of them.
Yeah, that's right. And also just one last thing very quick, we have a site built for SpringFest. So feel free to go to stuy-pa.org to visit our SpringFest pages, and you will learn about the, the instructors, like the program, and also like who you're gonna learn the yoga and the Zumba from. So a lot more information you can related to this SpringFest you can find on this website. So with that, all right, so let me stop sharing. Okay, so now we are
one thing before this, I actually would like to make sure that we have our voting is completed, and I just want to say that, let me just quickly double check. Thank you to everyone who participated in the meeting minutes approval. We are approved. The form is closing now, so thank you, everyone.
all right. So moving on to our program tonight. So Joanne, would you like to give us an introduction of the speaker tonight?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Joanne Giordano, and I'm the chair of the PA's Health and Safety Committee. For the past few years, our committee has worked with the school administration to host these wellness nights at PA meetings. Each year, we've been looking for guest speakers to address different health and wellness topics that are of concern to committee. And this year, everyone was very concerned about the increased number of hours that our students are spending on technology and social media. So we're really excited to welcome tonight's guest speaker. It's Max Stossel, who's going to be talking to us about social media and your kids. And after his presentation, he's here to engage with us in a discussion and take any questions. Just so you all know, Max is an award-winning artist named by Forbes as the best storyteller of the year. He is the Youth and Education Advisor for the Center of Humane Technology, which is an organization of former tech insiders dedicated to realigning technology with humanity's best interests, as featured in the documentary, The Social Dilemma. So I could go on and on about Max, but I think everyone would rather just hear directly from him. So please, we all here at Stuyvesant, we welcome Max from the Center of Humane Society. Welcome to Stuyvesant.
Thanks for having me. And thank you all for being here and spending your time and attention here with us tonight. Yeah, my name is Max Stossel. I'm a Youth and Education Advisor for the Center for Humane Technology, which is the org from The Social Dilemma. I like to often start things off by just taking a deep breath in and out. One more time in and it feels good to be a human. And sometimes we forget that in front of these screens. Have you ever looked down at your phone or computer and then immediately gotten distracted and forgotten why? When I ask that question in person, that's everybody and some liars. I always appreciate the liars. But that used to be my job. I was designing notification structures to take you out of your world and bring you into mine, because I was told by my investors that if we held your attention for 2 minutes or longer, then we had a valuable company. So much thought started to go into how many notifications can I send you a day without you turning them off? What exactly should the language of those be? Oh, if I autoplay videos inside of this experience, we can hold your attention for about 10% longer. Let's do that. There were so many choices that ultimately would influence the amount of time that we spent on these devices. But as I sort of zoomed out and started to meet some people involved in this movement, I recognized the difference between the things that just work at steering human behavior. Because when we're doing it, we think, well, if someone's using this product, they like using this product. But there are some things that just work at grabbing and holding human attention. And so it can be very, very challenging to have a healthy relationship with this stuff. And I'm going to get into a little bit of the details of how some of that works, specifically in the challenges with social media. And you should all be able to see my screen now. If you cannot, someone please stop me. But to begin, of course, technology is amazing. We're good, you can see my screen. Great. If you were to tell me 100 years ago we could have these face-to-face conversations across oceans, I'm the guy on Google Maps who's going around like this until the blue line lines up because I have no idea where I'm going without it. You have a flashlight, a stopwatch, a calculator, and this incredible camera on this tiny device, plus every song ever created. There is no doubt this new technology can be indistinguishable from magic, but somewhere along the lines, we seem to have lost our way. 50% of teens feel addicted to their mobile devices, and that's really just the beginning of some of the negatives that have occurred here. And so I don't believe this is an accident. And if we zoom out on something like this, and this is Facebook, so obviously this is for us older folks here, but it's the same for Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat for the youngers. If I see this person has tagged a photo of you, what are we actually saying? We're saying, hey, someone's taken a picture of you and shared it with everybody you know and a whole bunch of people you don't. Do you want to click that photo? And if you're a teenager in the most socially vulnerable time of your life, of caring as much as ever of what people think of you, do you want to know what someone has said about you or posted about you to everyone? And of course we do. And of course, it's not just the photo. Once we have your attention, we're very good at holding it, and it's spend the next 20 minutes inside of this experience. And let's say you go, you know what? I'm going to turn off all my notifications. They're not going to get me. I'm going to turn them all off. Then even still, we have these 24-hour environments like Instagram stories and Snapchat, where it's the same thing in our bodies of someone said something about me. But now if I literally don't check every day, then I don't see what it is. I literally can't click that button. So all the same things happening. But now it's just if I don't check every 24 hours, it goes away. I literally can't see what's happening. So all of that is to say that it can be very hard to disconnect from this stuff, can be very hard to have a healthy relationship with it. One of the reasons this stuff works, as you might have seen in the movie, is something that makes more money in America than baseball, movies, and theme parks combined, and that's slot machines. And how is that possible when you only play with a coin or a small amount of money at a time? And the answer is something called variable rewards, where I pull a lever or I push a button, and sometimes I win and get a really flashy reward and it feels good, and sometimes I don't. And in animal studies, they find that if the monkey can pretty much tell when it's going to win from pushing the button, it tends to, push the button and go about its life. But on a variable reward schedule, it will just keep pushing that button and pushing that button and pushing that button. And so much of our phones are designed like these slot machines. Every time we hit one of those little red icons, we're playing the slot machine of, ooh, how many likes am I going to get? And then for teenagers, did that one person I really wanted to like my photo, did they like it? And sometimes I did, and sometimes they didn't. Did I get more than I got last time? Sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. And so it's this emotional slot machine. And it's not just the red icons, but every time that we're scrolling in any of these feeds, we're playing the slot machine of what am I going to get? What am I going to get? And sometimes it excites us. Sometimes it's really inspiring. Sometimes it's truly amazing. There are a lot of very real things that we actually love and want inside of these feeds. But they get all put into this mechanism of the slot machine, where the things that we actually want or actually crave or actually desire, or at least a synthetic version of them, is in this variable reward schedule that we're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling through. Parents here, you might be able to relate to pulling your email to refresh right after you just did. Same mechanism, the slot machine of what am I going to get? Something exciting, this emotional internal slot machine. They're also, so a big pitch of mine here is like, I really think, especially right now with increased just technology use over COVID, obviously the phones and computers are this incredible lifeline to help people connect. There's no question about it. But when the primary communication mechanism is Instagram or is Snapchat, it has all these little elements in it that just make everything more stressful. I'm big on, can we move the conversations over from Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok just to like regular messaging, WhatsApp, FaceTime, things that are actually about connection and are not really about manipulating us to steal our time. We see things like active 51 minutes ago. It might just look benign, but it starts to get into your relationships with, why were they active and they haven't seen my message? Oh, if I go on, they're going to know I was active. Hey, I know that you saw that, but you didn't say that you saw it. Just these added elements of social tension that exist in teenage relationships. And a really important thing to check in on here is like the different, if you say to a teenager, I want you to delete Snapchat, they're going to like recoil up and think that you're trying to take them away from their friends. I don't want you to stop connecting with your friends. I don't want teenagers to stop messaging with their friends. I really do want you to move these conversations over to other apps, and changing the conversation from what do you use? This is just what we do, to do you actually like it? How do you feel about it is really helpful. I want to share this. I want you to watch the hands as they go up and down as I ask these questions. And this happens in every school that I go to.
Please, I don't want your half hands. Give me whole hands if you have Snapchat. If you use Snapchat, give me your whole hands, please. Keep your hands high if you have some kind of streak going, any streaks going. Keep your hands high if you like streaks. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it wild that so many of us are doing something that we don't actually like doing? And by this point in the presentation, you can probably guess that the people at Snapchat are not waking up in the morning and saying, how can I create the most meaningful friendships and relationships between teenagers today? Streaks are a really powerful tool at getting us to come back and use the app every day. But something strange starts to happen, right? It starts to feel like, ooh, if I don't have streaks going with this person, are we really friends? Or like, ooh, if I don't have streaks with enough people or the right people, am I popular? Am I socially doing okay in school? It starts to feel like it has this very real impact on our lives, even though it was created by people who look like me in California and has nothing to do with our actual friendships. But it starts to feel very, very real. I have a friend who works at a psychiatric hospital, and she talks about how when teenagers are checking in, they are terrified to give their phones away because they cannot end their streaks. It would be the end of the world for them to end their streaks. And WhatsApp is just as easy to send messages back and forth. We don't need to be entering into these environments, but it starts to feel like a very real measure of our friendships, and probably shouldn't. And actually, quickly, give me a show of hands. Have you ever taken a picture of a wall or something ridiculous just to keep a streak going? Please, give me honesty. Give me honesty. What are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing?
And so we're starting to see a lot of
Please, I don't want your...
We're starting to see a lot of teenagers just like taking pictures of what's a chore. They're giving their friends their password to 5 friends when they go on vacation, and just they have to keep up these things. and they don't actually particularly like doing them. And separating that mentally is a powerful way of framing the question. Not just do you like this, but how does this app or game make you feel? It's often we get with a lot of parents. I get this isn't going to be my kid, but the reality is introducing a smartphone is like probably introducing porn into your kids' lives. There's an experiment in the documentary called Childhood 2.0, where they set up an account for an 11-year-old girl. That's the picture of the 11-year-old girl. And when they start a timer, and within a minute and 30 seconds, they start getting messages like you see here on the bottom of the screen. And so for young girls, that's what in general happens. They get messages from older guys who are being very creepy with them. And for boys, they often get the porn bots, which are like sort of flirty, attractive looking pictures that then link out to porn sites. It's like, I often get the question, and this is the ideal silver bullet thing everybody wants: how can we give the good of social media without the bad? I don't believe that there's really an answer to that. I don't believe that there's a way to get one without the other. They are just naturally intermixed. And so it's just helpful to recognize that if we are introducing a smartphone with social media and porn into kids' lives, then like that's probably what's going to end up happening. And there are other alternatives that I'll get into later. And I think just like it's awkward, I know, but the earlier that we're having conversations about sex and sex ed, the better. Because if we don't, then it becomes social media and it becomes porn that is the education, and that's in nobody's best interest. So the gaming companies are better than everybody else at these tactics. They invented gamification. Fortnite is the hit of the moment. This is a presentation. You see him in the Fortnite shirt from someone who works at Epic Games, which makes Fortnite. He's just talking about how some of those variable rewards appear in Fortnite.
Now, variable ratio is probably the most famous. Here we've got an example of it in Fortnite where it's used for the llamas. These are kind of loot drops or random loot crates. And a variable ratio is where there is a variable number of responses you have to do until you get the reward you're after. So with the llamas, you may not get what you want every single time. You have to open them a few times. And they even have a mechanic where they can upgrade when you hit them. So you go to open them and they turn silver or gold. Critical hits is a more kind of moment-to-moment thing of a variable ratio. If there's a critical hit system in your game, every hit people do, there's a chance it's critical, and then eventually it may actually get there. If we look at these, the reason these are famous is that quite often the ratio is used in gambling, and the response they tend to get is a very constant and kind of high-level response. And that's because you don't know how many times you have to respond before you get the reward, so people tend to keep it up. It's not predictable like fixed ratio is, so it doesn't tend to lead to these big dips in behavior.
So my audio was a little bit choppy there. I don't know if that was there for you too. But in general, what he's saying is that like any game with loot crates is pretty much slot machines for kids. That's a good thing to watch out for. And he's just, in general, he's giving a presentation to other game developers. There's a large industry that is working to give whatever tactics works at keeping kids gaming. I don't know that if anybody wants to spend money on a Fortnite skin, that's really so different than the shoes that you wanted growing up as a kid, except that you weren't pushed so systematically down a rabbit hole that might make you very emotionally engaged and ready to buy. If you are going to spend money on these games, or your kids are going to spend money on these games, I recommend at least like taking a breath and a step back before you actually make that decision. This is for us here. Candy Crush is a slot machine, not a skill game. It is a slot machine. Parents, it is a slot machine. I talk so much like crap about it in my work that I figured I better as well download this thing so I know what I'm talking about. 147 levels later, I'm proud to say I deleted it. It is a slot machine. It is a slot machine. So a question to ask here is, am I using technology or is it using me? And in that regard, which apps or games make me feel good afterwards or during, and which make me feel not so good afterwards? So we asked, with an app called Moment, we asked 200,000 people, and it's a little bit of an old study now, which apps or games leave you feeling with satisfaction versus regret. And overwhelmingly on the left, you have utilities, things you get in and out of very quickly. You also have some meditation apps and audio. People seem to really like listening to books, listening to music. They're happy with the time they're spending on those apps. On the right, you have dating apps, social media apps, and gaming apps that we're spending an hour plus a day on and are left feeling with regret. And of course, not everybody who uses these apps feels not good about them, but this weird smiley face graph is saying that on average, people who are happy with their use spend about 2.4 times less than people who are unhappy. So maybe that's one episode of Netflix instead of 3. So if it was my job as an app developer to try and get you to spend more and more time on the apps, in some ways I'm pushing you towards the unhappy side of the spectrum. So we've got misaligned incentives there. And in that regard, this is going to seem like I'm taking a weird turn, but you have a picture of an ant being stepped on by a construction worker, being stepped on by a giant robot foot. And if you think about this in terms of intelligence, obviously we're smarter than the ant. In some ways, artificial intelligence is already surpassing us in terms of calculations that it can make. In other ways, we're still surpassing it. But we don't go out of our way to harm ants. In fact, we might pick them up and move them out of harm's way. But the moment their goals interfere with our goals, like they want to live there and we want to build, we just annihilate them without question. And already some of the most sophisticated algorithms and machine learning algorithms in the world that decides what's the next perfect piece of content to show you, their goals are not the same as our goals and not the same as our kids' goals. They don't wake up in the morning and say, how can we spend as much time as possible on TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram today? But net, that is what these algorithms are trying to push us towards. And there are some stopgaps in place. It's not all completely, how do I steal as much of your time as possible? But let's say that these companies were to realize, you know what, it's like 80% less time is what's going to be best for people. The business model just does not allow for that sort of change to happen, because you're not the customer, you're the product, you're the thing being sold. Your kids' eyeballs are the things being sold in this system. So we think about this as the scary end of the world for robots, but I actually think this is a far more likely outcome. Aldous Huxley's dystopia, never underestimating man's infinite appetite for distraction. But we'd never really go this way, right? Like this would never really be the future that we'd actually be living in or walking towards. But no, I'm still being unfair. This is Mark Zuckerberg demonstrating virtual reality at a conference, and he's showing, look how engaging it is. He can sneak up to the stage because everyone is so engrossed. And we're not doing this all the time, but we are doing this all the time. And is it really so different if the phone is not directly over our eyeballs and it's all over the world? This is an artist who takes pictures of people right as they look up from their smartphones, calls them smartphone zombies. Does this person look happy? This one for us here, an artist who photoshops phones out of pictures. Something wrong here. And so what's happening on the screens? Because screen time is not a particularly good measure of health in this. A lot of screen time is very different. But so what are they doing on Snapchat? Snapchat is the #1 messaging app for teenagers. In general, the way that we text, they use Snapchat. You saw about streaks as like a very powerful tool to get what a streak is. I don't know if I defined it. As I send you a message, you send me one back within 24 hours, and these little numbers start to show up and the emojis start to show up, and you want to build that number higher and higher. They've been told that the pictures disappear on Snapchat, so that's refreshing for teens who have been told that everything on the internet is forever. Pictures don't actually delete. They are stored on a server for 30 days and can be subpoenaed by governments, but for all practical purposes in a teenager's life, they do go away. If naked pictures are being sent and received, this is probably the place where it's happening. Instagram, what is it at its core? Sharing memes, pictures, videos of themselves and their friends, a lot of stories here. What I get most concerned with here is where the digital environment seems to have surpassed importance of the physical environment. People only wanting to go to the place so they can take the picture and show it off on social media, only wanting to hang out with certain friends for their followers or so that it looks that way. When I give talks in schools, I make a joke of how many of us are only getting in or staying in relationships to look #blessed or in love on Instagram, and that gets more likes or more laughs, rather, likes, funny, that I would like it to. And so, like, you remember being in high school just now, every single moment, how popular was that? How popular is this person? You've quantified, gamified, how many likes did this get? How many followers did this person have? So all of those dynamics, as social media does with so much of life, just pouring gas on so many of these elements of humanity that we probably wouldn't want to pour gas onto. TikTok is probably where the most amount of time is being spent right now. TikTok is the best of the design slot machines, just in terms of attention stealing, like a black hole of time for sure. They're mostly watching dance, humor, and meme videos, like a bunch of them very funny, very creative. It also just tends to sexualize very quickly. In general, it's like a PG-13 R border, I would say. It's like, if you're thinking about what kind of content is on there, it's probably related to that movie-wise. And yeah, this is where a lot of the time is going. I'll say this later, but I'll repeat it throughout because it's my main point here, is like, if people like making these creative videos, I'm not saying stop doing that. Like, please make these videos, be creative, use technology to be creative. There's a big difference between the act of doing that and then posting it in this environment, which is now like, okay, how much did people like this? Did I get more? Did I get the approval going into that drug of the slot machine? So like, please, like, make the videos, like watch videos and make them and be creative and send them to your friends. But there's a big difference between doing that and putting it in these environments. YouTube, most of the content on YouTube in the teen world is watching vlogs, gaming videos, and makeup tutorials. There's also a huge variety of stuff on there. They are learning, and I put learning in quotes because pretty much a good way of framing this is YouTube just pushes us towards the most extreme versions of whatever ideas we're already primed and likely to believe. So like this is fixed now, but it's true of pretty much every idea. If you were to search whether the earth is round or flat, about 20% of Google results would say that it's flat. About 35% of YouTube results would say that it's flat. But then of the YouTube recommendation algorithm, like when it picks what video to watch next, about 90% of those would say the earth is flat. And so the recommendation algorithm is really a push just towards like extremism, towards like the craziest version of what you're already most likely to believe. Zeynep Tufekci is a researcher who touches on this too. And it's not just politics. It's like, if you're watching vegetarian videos, it's going to push you towards veganism. Turning off the autoplay, like turning off the recommendations, is a really good way to just like keep your sanity with YouTube. And most teens are able to relate to like, oh yeah, I went trying to watch one video and then I woke up 2 hours later in a daze. So what is this doing to our brains and to our kids' brains? The first thing here is multitasking. There's some theories that people have said like, oh, they'll just learn how to multitask. That's just how it's going to go. Little known fact about this next generation, they are not a different breed of human. And for all humans in all different situations, multitasking is not real. It's just switching our attention rapidly back and forth between tasks with visual attention. And so researchers found that people who had their phones off just in another room did perform significantly better on cognitive tasks than people who even had their phones off and on their desk or off in the bag. But just if you want your kids to do better in school or you want to do better at work, just literally put the phone outside the room when you're trying to focus was about 5 points better on cognitive tasks. One thing I'm concerned about here is that it's never been easier to run from ourselves. Like if you're interested in psychology and understanding coping mechanisms and like safety blankets, we just now have the most addictive safety blanket that is there all the time. It's never been easier to, things are a little bit awkward. I don't know what to say. Let me just pull this out for a second. Or, oh, this homework is hard. I don't know what to do. Okay, let me just open up a new tab just for a moment. Let me just play one game. It's never been easier to just not feel our feelings and pull out the distraction because it's just on us 24/7, 7 days a week. Sometimes I'll get the question of, I need to cough, excuse me. Sometimes I'll get the question of like, well, but don't they say this about all new technology? Said it about radio, said it about Elvis shaking his hips. And for me, this is much less about like the actual newness of social media, but the ubiquity, the 24/7. It's like, I love ice cream. If I had to carry ice cream around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if I had to go inside of a thing of ice cream to talk to my friends and to do my work, and if someone was tracking every lick that I made of ice cream and using that data to personally make it more delicious for me, I would have an ice cream problem. And so I think like that's what we're seeing here with social media, and it's just here all the time. And the 24/7 nature and the fact that it contains such real aspects of our lives is far more the fear for me than like, oh, new technology. Because of course, yes, there is hysteria over all new technology. And the most concerning piece of this, especially for 10 to 14-year-old girls, the way social media is impacting mental health is really challenging. We get a lot of these messages. I'll read some of them out loud. I started going through depression when I was about 11 or 12, all because of social media. I would look at these girls and compare for legit hours. I didn't know what to do but cry and cry. I started to get suicidal. I'd show up in school. When I got my phone, I thought it would be fun to download TikTok, and now it ruined my life. I was given access to the internet at the age of nine. I got Snapchat and Instagram at 9, and Musical.ly, which was bought by TikTok, at 11. It just ruined my self-confidence and robbed me from my happiness and well-being. I battle with anxiety and depression and don't know how to tell my closest friends. I'm currently 13 years old. Social media has ruined my life. I look myself in the mirror and hate the way I look, cry myself to sleep at night every single day. I was 10 when my parents gave me a tablet. My only form of social media was Pinterest for a while, but I'd quickly been introduced to porn and rape and a lot else. I was pretty much addicted at 11, but by 12, I realized how wrong and gross it was for a kid my age to be thinking and looking at this stuff. It took a while, but I disciplined myself and I got out of it. I'm 15 now, and nobody in my life knows it happened. These aren't anomalies. There are thousands of these, especially to 10 to 14-year-old girls. We're seeing big increases in highly depressive symptoms. There was critique about some of this research, but the reality is, even in the critiques research, yes, if you look at screen time and mental health do not seem to be so significantly correlated. Social media and mental health, especially for young girls, absolutely does. And so how do we talk to our kids about this stuff? The hardest part is leading by example. They learn it from us. We like to think of this as just a teenager problem, and it's obviously so much more. And of course, it's hard, like especially now during COVID, it is very hard to have any kind of healthy relationship with this stuff. Something I do recommend is when possible, just like narrating when we are like choosing a device over attention with our kids, just saying like, hey, yes, I'm looking at this right now. I just need to finish this task and then I want to be present with you. Or like, yeah, I know I'm on my screen all the time. This is how we put food on the table. Like that's what's going on here. Or like, yeah, you know what? I'm struggling and I'm distracted too. This is hard. Like, how can I be better? Can we work on this together? But communicating that and leading by example. We do get a bunch of messages from teenagers as well, just about struggling, feeling like their parents love their phones more than they love them. I went to hang out with my dad. We went to watch Doolittle. He was on his phone the whole time. Sometimes I wonder if he wants to spend time with me. Now my brother and I are hanging at his house, and guess what he's doing on his phone? Hearing you speak gave me the courage to confront my dad, who I didn't always get to see. He's always on his phone, making me feel worthless. When I confronted him about how I felt, he's been putting in an effort to listen to what I have to say and giving advice in return. There are a lot of kids who are really feeling just like neglected, and it's easy to do because it's so easy to get distracted, but we do see a lot of this. And so before hearing these mental health stories, you panic and rip the phone away. It is really important to note that something about like 10% of the suicides that are related to phones were the result of taking them away. Obviously, there's underlying stuff there. It's not just because someone took away the phone, but like especially in hard times, the phone very much is also the connection to friends, especially now during COVID. It is the blanket of that, and so like conversation is much better than shame in terms of just like, oh my God, this is going to get you. And I don't believe the enemy here is technology. I think the enemy in a lot of ways is social media. And of course, not for everybody. If it's working great for you and your kid, fantastic. I'm not here to tell you otherwise, but especially for 10 to 14-year-old girls, and like, it's especially for girls all throughout young ages in high school, and for some boys as well, but just like really just moving the conversations, especially now, since so much of our social life is on social media, moving those from that environment to something else, I think is really what the goal is, and talking about it. How's this working for you? What are you finding? How are you feeling? Really helpful. Remembering not just do you like this, but how does this app or game make you feel? I was a gamer growing up. I would go on like 18-hour Halo benders. If you were to ask me, do I like Halo? I'd be like, yeah, I love Halo. Halo's all I want to do. If you were to say, how does Halo make me feel? If I were aware enough of how I feel, which is another thing, especially with young boys, I think I've been able to say like, look, the first hour, that's exciting and exhilarating. The next 17, I'm just like stressed in a bit of anger, like trying to get to the next level. And so really focusing in on feelings as opposed to time spent is a powerful principle to move forward from this. Also including them in the rulemaking process. By the time you've made a rule, there's a new thing, and it's always evolving and always changing. It can feel impossible to stay up to date on this stuff. Like just really opening up, having a conversation, not just like setting rules and having that be that, but like what's working for me? What are you getting out of this on a human level? If there's like, it's just fun. Okay, great, maybe. With it's just fun, it's probably helpful to have time limits on how much of this they're spending their time on. But like, okay, it's fun. What kind of fun? Are you being creative here? Like try to understand what sort of human things are going into the screen time to help you understand what they're getting out of it. And they will know more than you in a lot of ways. So do be open to what they have to say about what that's adding value, the ways it's adding value to their lives. Wait Until 8th is a movement that has communities of parents delay until 8th grade to give their kids smartphones. A lot of people being like, look, I don't want to be the only parent who's not giving my kid a smartphone. Also, I've spoken with it is much easier to do this in groups for sure in that way. Also, I've probably spoken with like hundreds of thousands of students and parents about this stuff. And I've gotten a lot of, I'm so glad I waited. I have not gotten any, I wish I'd given it earlier. My own experience, maybe a bubble, but I really do believe that like increasing the amount of time of regular life, social life before this thing happens, like the number of years of maturity that happens before the smartphone comes in, I think is really, really powerful. There is something called Gab phone that kind of looks like a smartphone, but just like it's a phone. Isn't that incredible? It's an actual phone. It gives phone calls, gives text, like has some location, but just isn't a social media and porn machine also. Definitely, if my kids were that age, were younger than this, I would absolutely be giving them that as opposed to a smartphone. Zones in the house, people have found really helpful, like dinner tables, having parents and kids both put their phones away. The bedroom is another one that can be a great phone-free zone if possible. I know it's hard during COVID. Also, I know that all of this is so hard and things get lax over COVID. So understandable, everybody's doing their best. But blue light and sleep really does a number on us. Like our brain thinks it's the sun and our rhythms get messed up. And when sleep is messed up, that gets into all the rest of our lives. Just if you can, sleeping with your phone on the other side of the room or outside the bedroom. Physical alarm clocks are $8 on Amazon. You can buy one of those for your kids. Have the first, and yourself as well. Your first thoughts, if you're using your alarm clock as your phone, your phone is your alarm clock, are like, you see what? You see, oh, here are the 4 emails I missed. Like literally your brain is groggy and just immediately stress and anxiety into your day. You feel like, but wait, what if that's that really important thing? I invite you to audit your life. Like how much can't wait 10 minutes? Like what actually can't wait the 10 minutes for you to wake up and think your own thoughts? Usually it's much less than people think. For you and your kids, going in and turning off any notification that's not from a human being who's trying to reach you. Happy holidays from Tinder. You haven't played Candy Crush in a while. This person has liked your photo, all algorithmically looking at you, trying to get you to spend more time. Go into your settings, take the time, like just go through and make it so your phone can only buzz if there's a human being trying to reach you. And you'll have these resources as well, by the way, on our website, and you don't have to memorize them or write them all down. For your kids, especially, like if they're not wanting to delete social media, at least, especially for young girls, go through and like go with them and have them unfollow every account that makes them feel badly about themselves. The Instagram influencers and Instagram models that are just creating these impossible standards of beauty. It's not so different from like the magazines or TV that we grew up with, but it's just much more constant. And then it's like actually your age people or your friends. It's just like heavier and more self-comparison and intensified. We get a lot of messages from people who are like, oh, immediate relief from just unfollowing people who make me feel badly about myself. And there also are things where it's like, well, I can't unfollow them. They follow me. That's dumb. Like, that's dumb. Don't let that be an excuse. Just like purge it if it's not making them feel good. Not thinking differently than you. That's very different, but like making you feel badly about yourself. You can delete these apps. And the helpful way to frame this when you're talking to your kids is not like, if you're saying delete Snapchat especially, it's like re-emphasize, don't stop talking to your friends, please talk to your friends. But do we want to move this from this toxic environment over to one that's actually about you communicating with each other and not stealing time? Okay, what do you love about TikTok? How can we help you still do that? And do you maybe want to make those videos or watch some of them, but not watch them endlessly and not just like put them into this self-comparison machine and inadequacy machine? Instagram, unfollowing people or deleting it, all just like very helpful to do. Another message here, I wanted to say I had deleted Instagram back in June, then got it back for a day in August, then deleted again. So I've been off about 5 months. I was so much happier. I didn't realize what it was doing to me until I just barely got it back again and realized here I am deleting it again. Like I didn't realize what it was doing to me. A lot of these kids don't know what life is like without these things. They might just be feeling down and like feeling the self-comparison or feeling inadequate and not recognize the impact social media has without that break and step back. Sometimes you can't even notice. Also, look, honestly, like there are plenty of parents who say to me, okay, like they take a break and they get it and they know they're addicted, but then like 5 days later, they're just back on it. Like it's really an addiction they can't shake. And like, it's true. I think we are in the addiction conversation with some kids here. And it starts to, some of the things that actually seem to have worked, or like the 90-day wilderness retreat of like actually writing down what are the triggers, because as with any addiction, there is something else going on, but this is so deeply integrated into our lives, it can be really hard to notice. There are parental tools. Screen time for parents is one where you can kind of watch how much time is being spent on each app and just sort of turn some off. Hour Pact and Screen Time and Circle are the 3 that have risen to the top in my work. And what I will say is like just the tools without conversation doesn't seem to work so well. It's like not just, oh, okay, it's shut off now versus, hey, like you have an hour on Instagram today. Like, how is that working for you? Like, what are you using it for? Like understanding and making this a 2-way conversation is a much better way of approaching it. Sometimes, especially with young boys, if you say like, okay, I don't want you to game for 18 hours, they'll say, what the heck do you want me to do? And so Game Quitters is a tool that has like a hobby tool that helps you search things that are similarly engaging in certain ways to gaming. Like computer programming, photography, music production, things that have like skill and achievement type levels that just are ways of focusing your attention elsewhere. And Game Quitters nor I believe that all gaming is bad by any means, just like a way of coming up with other ideas of what to do. For schools, like I really recommend in general, I think school is an opportunity to, when we come back to school, teach kids focus, patience, and how to be without their devices. So like one, also we had this idea of like, oh my God, an iPad in every hand, how incredible. And that was the philosophy for a long time. There's very little evidence that shows that it improves learning, and there's a lot of evidence that shows some trouble. I really invite you to audit yourselves of like, is the tech you implemented in schools doing what it meant to? Like, are learning outcomes improving? Are human results improving, or is it just more engaging? Because it's going to be more engaging. There's a lot of science into making it more engaging, but that's not necessarily any better for us. Also, tech is a trade. Pay attention to what we're losing as we're gaining. A good example of this is like, I'm happy to trade my data for Google Maps. Like, that's a trade I'm really comfortable making. I might not be willing to trade my peace of mind for like scrolling on Instagram or seeing what my friends internationally are up to. Also, like Sherry Turkle talks about how in conversation, if we're being like, oh, who's that actor in that thing? We could look it up and then we know the answer. The trade there is that we lose the process of figuring that out together, the remembering, the problem solving. And so just always understanding that when we introduce tech into an environment, it's a trade, and it's a trade that we're comfortable with. And similarly with new tech in schools, like flipping the switch from, oh my God, great, new tech, new access, fantastic. Of course, it can be revolutionary, and let's not throw that out. But like starting with a skeptical eye of, I'm gonna assume this isn't gonna help. Like, tell me why it is. And then when it does, fantastic, like great, let's use it. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. But there's also a huge ed tech industry that has like a lot of just like rewards programs that like make kids excited to use a thing or clicking the button, but not really learning. And finally, just like upgrading the human skills to deal with this stuff, social emotional learning, mindfulness, communication, also just like time management and life planning are essential now to deal with this stuff. They have been dismissed as woo-woo in the past, but like, if you don't know how you feel, you don't know how Instagram makes you feel. If you don't recognize that like, oh, that buzz, but I don't have to reach for it, you're going to be absolutely reaching for every single buzz. If you can't schedule your time, you're going to get dragged into all of this stuff. So like upgrading the human behind the screens is so important. Of course, there are exceptions here to like the phones and schools rule. Like sometimes you give certain things to kids with special needs, they light up. Obviously, if it's working, like fantastic, it's working, that's great. We don't need to change anything. And also there are certain vulnerable populations that like the only place they feel seen or understood is in social groups or online. So having spaces within school that are like available to them so that if they need that support, they can go get it. Important, like nothing with a totally broad brush, but in general, I think switching the mindset that a lot of us have had of just like, this is just the way it is now, or more tech is great, to, okay, let's assume this actually isn't helping. And where are the places where that's not true? And let's integrate them. Let's revolutionize. Let's use tech in the places that it's revolutionary. I'll leave you with a story here from Yuval Harari, who is an author who wrote Sapiens. And he talks about how when he was 18, he figured out he's gay. And then he spent the next 6 months thinking, how did I not know this about myself? And realizing that in the future, an eye tracking software would have predicted with pretty high accuracy that his eyes were going to men over women. And what would the world have looked like for him if Coke knew that about him and Pepsi didn't? And Coke was showing him shirtless men ads and Pepsi was serving him shirtless women ads. And he just kind of liked Coke over Pepsi and wasn't really sure why. And so with so many companies trying to like use every click and every piece of data to get to know us, one of the best things we can do for ourselves and for our kids is just help them win the race to know themselves. What are you feeling? What's going on inside of you? What are your desires? What are your impulses? What do you care about? Where is this coming from? Why do you want the things that you want? There's no shortage of people trying to steal our time and attention to sell us stuff. And so trying to arm them in that battle, I think, is one of the best things we can do. Like just self-awareness becomes like a critical thing to teach in this new world. Finally, this sounds ridiculous, but I would have everybody get up and hug for 8 seconds at the end of talks before COVID, and you can't get it through a screen. I get a lot of messages being like, I just didn't realize how much I need a hug. We're starved for it right now. In this time, we're starved for like physical attention. Your homework is to give in a COVID safe way an 8-second hug to your family. And it'll be awkward, but it's gotta be 8 seconds, and it's better that way. If Taylor and Kanye can do it, so can you. Finally, My Social Truth, we have a campaign here where people can share their own stories. And also like I have found in my work that using these stories as conversation starters with kids is really helpful. It cuts through the like, well, this is good and this is bad about it. And you can just bring up some of these stories and say, hey, do you have any friends? It's harder to be like, is this you? Might be really defensive, but do you have any friends or do you know anyone who struggles with this? What's your experience with it? Might open up more honest conversations about some of the challenges of social media. I've thrown a lot at you. I want to open it up to questions for the remainder of our time. Also, I want to if you're doing if you figured this out in ways that are great, like if you have things that work really well at overcoming some of these challenges, like please also do volunteer that. There's a lot of people in the room. You have a lot of wisdom for each other. please don't hesitate to also celebrate wins. So I'm here to help or answer questions, but also like, please do like bring in of like, look, this is what I was facing and we did this and this worked really well for this problem. We need more of that. And so thank you for your time and attention, and let's move into Q&A.
Great, thank you so much. We have a few hands up, and I think Dina has been unmuting people.
Yeah, they all have permission to speak. So maybe we can start with Leslie Cami.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was fascinating, and thank you to the PA for organizing it. My question was just very simple. I don't think you mentioned Discord, and it's incredibly popular. I know with many Stuy students and with the one who lives in my apartment. And I just wondered, and I'm not on it. I do use, I use social media in part in my work. And so I'm aware of the communicative benefits of it. But I don't use Discord. And I was wondering if you have insight into it and where it fits in your spectrum.
Yeah, it's like in between, I would say, like in between just like regular messaging and social media. They definitely have some similar things. It's not as just like totally designed to try and grab and steal time. It definitely has become more and more popular. The fear within my concerns within Discord are just like, it's also easy recommendations to like all sorts of different groups or interests, and like there is kind of like a dark side to Discord. And so just I would try to have a conversation about like, what are you doing on there? Like what do you like about this? What's going on? I'm trying to get an understanding of what it's being used for, but I don't think it's as much about actual communication as just regular text or those applications are. But in my understanding, it's not as it's not designed in the same way that some of these others are.
Thank you. Do you have any insight into Clubhouse? That's something that
yeah, I have enjoyed Clubhouse much more so than a lot of these other social networks. Clubhouse also, like in the same way that study showed, we really like audio. You can put Clubhouse down and have your visual attention. And I think that's just in general more satisfying, and it's closer to conversation. And so yeah, I'm like, as far as social media goes, I'm a fan of Clubhouse. It's early days, and we'll see what pops up and how teens are using that. I'm actually not familiar with. It's new enough that I don't really know. But yeah, I have those Discord and Clubhouse. I am less concerned about than Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Yin Hao, you
Yes.
can unmute yourself.
Hi, yes. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for such a great talk. It was really wonderful, and the examples you used were really quite illuminating. I actually have a question that might be an unusual question, because it actually has to do with offline community kind of pressure to be part of social media and how you sort of address that. And let me give you an actual school example here. So at Stuy, there's a tremendous social pressure to join Facebook or be out of the loop in terms of what students are involved in, including clubs, and be.
Did we lose the sound for a second there?
We lost you at clubs, if you're still there.
I think we lost her.
Oh, I'm still here. I'm here.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so there is no discussion at all around, all the issues around privacy violations, echo chambers, general political undermining of governments and things like that. But that aside, how do you advise families about such tremendous social pressure, especially because it comes from a school community, to join a social media platform just to be kept up to date? It seems kind of like an unfair choice that's almost being created from even a community basis. And I know that in my family, none of us are on social media, but that also means that the pressure has been that I've had to have my child has had to create a workaround and ask friends who have Facebook accounts to tell her what's going on in order for her to know what's going on. So what do you advise, especially since you speak to schools, about the fact that many schools actually are creating these sorts of situations where there's a community pressure to join and treat a platform as if they're a public utility, which they are not, as you had pointed out in your talk?
Yeah, I mean, so that is interesting. It's also funny because Stuy and Hunter are the only two that I have engaged with, and both just New York, similar schools that really use Facebook that way still. I think there is very much oh, my grandma's on Facebook, I don't want to be on Facebook, of a culture in it. There are I don't know what exactly good alternatives for message boards or things like that would be. I hope this talk can be an invitation to rethink that, of maybe we don't want to do this on Facebook, maybe we want to do it elsewhere. I mean, yeah, groups are in some ways a really fantastic tool, and in other ways just very much in all of that same system, and everything that you talked about. What I would advise in terms of the social pressure would be there are things you can install, like Newsfeed Eradicator, which is I actually don't think that's on our resources, so I'll put it in the chat. But that gets rid of anything, that gets rid of everything on Facebook that's notifications and all those things, and it just shows an empty screen in those other places, so you can just go into the groups that you wanted to go into. So that would be a tool that you could use if you wanted to have Facebook and just also install it, and then try to have the discipline to only go on doing that. But I'm with you that it would be nice to think about what other alternatives that are. It's funny that you were overlooking the undermining governments piece. There is absolutely a lot of challenges. And in some ways, what is email good for? What are there other sort of message boards or school platforms or school technologies that everybody can log into? I'm certainly not on the team of we should just use Facebook now because this is what everybody uses. I don't have a great immediate solve, but I would invite you to rethink it.
Max, I'll give you a little bit of background on the question because it also came up from another parent. So at Facebook, we have an enormous amount of clubs, and there's student autonomy is huge. It has been all along in Stuy. So our student-run clubs use Facebook, and you're right. It seems like it's more, my kids would say, who's on Facebook when they're in college, but it's Stuy. They're still on Facebook, and they use it to talk to one another. So it's the student clubs, student run, that are creating platforms to communicate and talk, and that's what's happening. And it has been that way for many years. So they stick with it. The school itself, we have a Facebook page too that's used for a public facing, and a Twitter and Instagram also.
So yes, that Newsfeed Eradicator tool is really good, really helpful. I definitely recommend installing that. It's a Chrome extension, so it's more for the desktop than it is for mobile. And so if you can, say just try to use it here. But it definitely helps with going to Facebook for one thing, and then getting pulled in.
Thanks. And I think there's another gentleman. It's just an initial, so you can just unmute yourself, R, and maybe tell us who you are and ask your question, if he's still there.
I think he's muted. Can we unmute him? Or...
Yeah, I'm looking for.
I'm trying.
I can't unmute, but he has to unmute. Well, while we're figuring that out, we'll go to our next question, which is Tom. You can unmute.
Yes, hi Max, how are you?
Good, thank you.
In my house, I have basically two teenagers, one in Stuy and one in middle school. And now with remote learning, I found out that basically they have a lot of time to play a lot more, frankly. So I didn't know what to do. So at the end, I decided to buy a new router in order to be able to control their internet a lot more. So right now, I think I'm pretty good. In school hours, they cannot play. because the router stops them, and I take the phones away. But I cannot take the phones all the time. So from the desktop computer point of view, I think I'm pretty safe. But I haven't found any way to stop TikTok or Facebook, or other than taking physically the phone away. Is there any way that, let's say I can call T-Mobile and say, I want to be able to control my kid's phone, and I want to be able to click a button like I'm doing now in my router, and stop all traffic other than maybe messaging and phone. The phone they never use, by the way, which is unbelievable to me. They are phones, and the only thing they don't use is the phones. Do you have something to tell us about that, Max?
So there is, do they have iPhones?
They have Galaxies. I like more Android, you know?
Yeah, so there is, I think it's called digital well-being. I'm not as familiar with this for those having a similar problem with Apple, there is parental screen time. Like a screen time is an app that then would allow you to like set limits on specific apps. I think there's an equivalent for Android, screen time parental.
That's a good thing.
But I think it might be just iPhone. It looks like parental control shows up when I Google that, but like there's also digital well-being. So I'm not entirely sure on Android how to do that. There also is like OurPact and Circle are two companies that have showed up in my work that you might be able to install to do some of that. Like OurPact would be the first one that I'd look into. But yeah, it can be tough. And yeah, I wish I had a better Android solution. But definitely look into OurPact and Circle. And I would also, I'll say that for other parents looking at this sort of stuff, that's like a clever workaround. And I have also experienced a lot of parents who are talking about constantly playing like a one-up battle with their kids as they figure out how to undo all of the parental controls and router things they do try to install and set up. So hopefully having conversations about it and being on the same page can be helpful. But so yeah, I would say look into OurPact, AURPACT, and that might be able to help. And if not, like I would search online, like screen time is what it's called, and then like look for like what is the equivalent on Android.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Muted. Adriana Fader, you can unmute.
Thank you very much. This is a really helpful talk. I want to second Mr. R. I think this is a good segue to what I have to say. What I found at my home is that the parental controls and locking the router and all that works well, and removing the phones for like 13, 14, maybe up to 15 years old. But once you get into the 16 and even 17, they're almost, at the age where they can vote. And so there's also they're becoming independent. And there's a push for being more independent, and friends become even more important than parents. So we've found at our home, and it's been like everything got thrown in with the pandemic, because as this gentleman just said, it's much harder now that there's no separation. There's no time that's spent in the subway, going to Stuy, playing ball after school, going to sports or clubs. So it's all at home, doing school, and then they want to be in the room with a laptop. Before, when the kid was younger, we wouldn't let him be in the room with a laptop. Now we have to, because they're taking classes. So we've tried the controls more recently. He just turned 17. It didn't work, although before we were much more controlling. And so I think what struck me that I found helpful is the education, information, having conversations. Maybe that's the only way. I think that showing him your talk is helpful, but also I wonder if you have any comments about what if we're concerned about him, a 17-year-old, getting addicted at this point. During COVID, they have no other fun, going to the gym, there's none of that, friends, all online. Do you have any recommendations during COVID, apart from we tried the blocking the router. It didn't work with a 17-year-old. No, it was a disaster.
I mean, it's always better if it comes from within, right? And the controls themselves are almost never the option that'll end up having lasting change. I would say like check out that game quitters tool, that hobby tool of just like, because I think a big challenge right now is, it's like, what else? Okay, what else am I gonna do? And there's challenges with boredom, which is its own thing, because just not knowing how to be bored and do nothing is its own challenge that emerges from tech and social media. But like there is very much a need right now for just like a big list of fun things that if anyone wanted to like create or work on, also very invited. But like what are just like really fun activities that people can do and do together, do over Zoom, like games to play, like things that people can do from home. I think that is like the challenge becomes like the alternative, because also, kids are feeling it too of like, oh, okay, like I'm doing this a lot. It's COVID. I'm behind my screen all the time. Or just like, what are different ways of engaging that might feel good? It's like when we find them, they're not going to be so resistant to them. And a lot of it is just like, well, you're telling me to turn off my gaming and you're telling me to turn off my social media, but like, I'm supposed to sit in my room? Like what am I going to do? And sometimes it is also helpful to be like, like figure it out, like go create a game, like go figure it out like you had to when you were a kid, right? It's like, okay, if you're bored, like figure out something to do, get creative, go blow something up. Not that one, but like but I half joke of just with like, what are the creative outlets of different ways of expressing that? And not, hopefully not blow something up. But like, it's really, I think there really is a need for what are those suggested activities. And I would love to see that emerge. And it is hard right now in what to do like during COVID. But I think if you can solve that or work together to solve that, I think that's where you'll find success.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks. David, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, hi. Thanks very much, Joanne, Adina, Alex, and Connie for organizing this. Thanks, Max, for speaking to us. My situation, well, first of all, I really appreciate doing this. I really like the community that we have here. I find really like thinking with all the other parents in terms of their concerns. My concern is that I'm a bit of a Luddite to begin with. So for me to sort of understand my son's involvement with technology, I kind of feel like I almost need to know and understand the platforms as equally well as he is, right? But my particular problem is that for most of the day, I'm already on my computer for work. I'm interacting with clients, I'm interacting with work-oriented type things. And for me to sort of get up to speed on the specific platforms and the ins and outs of that almost seems a little bit of almost a bridge too far sometimes in terms of that, because his involvement with some of these social media platforms is not just the words, but it's also the images, the memes, the concepts, which when you have a meme or a topic, it has the ability to draw people together, which is a good thing, but it also has the ability to divide people, because part of the meme is sort of being in on the joke or in on the viewpoint expressed in it. And either you're into it, you're on a positive level, or you're not into it at a negative level. And I think it may be designed in that way to help your addiction in a way, to sort of make it more attractive or to generate more of a response. So what's your suggestion in terms of, is the only real option is to be as equally conversant in the technology as your children, as opposed to really just trying to limit it at the same time, right? Because a lot of your suggestions, I think, which are great, which is to try to redirect your children into something that's perhaps more constructive, or the option is to limit their engagement altogether, right? And I think those are great suggestions, and I appreciate them altogether. But I wonder, for somebody like myself, I don't know if that would necessarily work for me going forward. So I'd just like you to comment on that. Yeah.
Max, you're muted.
Sure. So with memes, I think what I would imagine that you'd be struggling to understand would be like kind of what he's believing or what he's joking about or what he's talking about. I'm assuming he with memes, that's just kind of the impression I get. But it could be she as well. I think like, I don't think you need to have an understanding of all of the ins and outs. I think your meta level understanding might be helpful. It sounds like you already understand that, okay, these memes are being used as like humor, as like a way of connecting, as like a way of forming identity and saying, look, like these people are with me, these people are against me. And it sounds like you have a good understanding of the challenges of that within online world and off. And so like, I think if you structure your conversations from there, and just like, even with all the new tech use, just like try to look at it from that perspective and just keep thinking to yourself, like, okay, like as the human that my child is, like, what are they getting here? What are they enjoying about this? And like, and asking those questions, like, what do you like? What do you use this for? How does this make you feel? Like, what are you getting out of this? I think that
yeah, I just feel like, for a long, I hate to admit this, but for the longest time, I used to think that LOL meant lots of love rather than laugh out loud. And so I would put that into text thinking I was saying that. In reality, I was kind of like making myself look like an idiot to not just to my son, but other people in my family and stuff. It just took me a long time to figure that out. So I always feel like I'm kind of behind the 8 ball when it comes to those kinds of things. And because of that, I lose a lot of credibility. I guess I've already lost a lot of credibility by admitting all of that to all these parents on the line, but whatever. It doesn't really matter to some extent, but that's the difficulty that I really have in terms of overall. I do feel kind of helpless sometimes.
I mean, you're definitely going to be behind your kids on what the memes are. Someone just put in the chat that knowyourmeme.com is a website where you can search memes and they give helpful explanations. So I'll put that in the chat here as well, and maybe that can be a helpful source. But yeah, you're definitely going to be behind and feeling left out. You're a parent. What's your job?
Thanks, Max. Oh, go ahead, Dina.
Well, Amy Chaskell had posed some good questions beforehand. I've brought her on. If you want to unmute Amy and ask your questions live, you can. If you want to unmute. I don't know if she's out there. If not, then I will find Amy's questions for later, but Jerry Shao can be next. You can unmute, Jerry. No, I'm losing them in the ether. So then there was a couple of questions that came through on the YouTube. One is from someone named Lita Jean. So my daughter in middle school used to sit for long hours and read a book. Now she uses her phone to read comics. What should I do?
What should I do? Yeah, that seems to be a trend. It happens a bunch. It's like, this could be solved with strict rules. It's a shame that's over YouTube. I would love to ask, what have you tried to do? What's working? Is she enjoying the comics? Is everything she's consuming more short form? Is she no longer taking in longer things? Are there other ways that she would like to read or take things in? Is she really getting a lot out of the comics? Is she creating out of the comics? It's so much so depends on you and your family. I don't feel like I have here's what to do.
If I may just ask a comment on that. I think what you've said before is that it's not necessarily technology. There's certain platforms that are addictive, like slot machines that bring you down a hole that don't make you feel good. So would it be, and just to add on to that question, that if someone who is reading on paper is now reading on their phone or on their computer might not necessarily be such a bad thing if it's...
Sure. It's just, there is Apple has a framework of how you think about technology and in education, and just porting over an activity that once was offline and making it online just usually isn't particularly beneficial, and sometimes isn't great for it. It's how wonderful if instead of a physics lesson, you can actually feel and see the gravity moving of these of these planets, but just oh, I had a textbook and now I just read it on a screen, just usually isn't, just usually not getting the same thing out of it. But also, if she loves comics, great. She loves comics and she's finding that. It's certainly not the same as scrolling mindlessly. And but there is a value to offline activities, but I don't have a clean, here's what to do for you, unfortunately. Also, I would love if there are people both on the Zoom and elsewhere. It's like things you're wins, things you've done that have worked, things you've please do share that with each other. There is tons of value in the room. It is more valuable than you think to share something that you've done that has worked well.
There was one comment brought up in YouTube to ask about Slack. If you have an opinion about Slack, there are quite a few students who use Slack as a communication platform.
Slack is designed much more for like actual messaging. Yeah, I think Slack is I wonder what they're using Slack for. But Slack it certainly would be better than Snapchat for communicating. So I do not have the same concerns about this stuff as I do about Slack.
Thank you. And I can ask, Dina, should I keep asking the questions here? We'll go ahead. Yeah.
The ones in the
chat.
Yeah,
so there's a few more questions here. What are some practical solutions to keep social media experience for teenagers healthy and productive? So if you could just review some of those practical solutions.
I mean, this is the golden question, right? How do we get the good and not the bad? How can they use the healthy stuff and not the other stuff? When the reality is that everything is inside of the slot machine. All of the good is in a slot machine with the bet, and it is this manipulative system. I believe strongly that right now there is not really an answer for that. It's an ongoing conversation. It's really difficult. But I don't believe that there is just like you take these steps and then you'll have the healthy social media and productive social media use. General principles, things to think about, like, are you mindlessly consuming? Are you creating? Like, really, what is your intent? What are you using social media for? What are you getting out of this? Like, on a human level, what are you getting out of this? Are you inspired and taking that inspiration elsewhere? Are you obsessed with the numbers? And everyone will be, because the numbers take over. But like, I think thinking about it that way could be helpful, but it's just like, there just isn't here, like you can do this way and then you've got all the good and not the bad. It just doesn't exist to my knowledge.
Thank you. We're going to ask, I know we brought some people into the room and we tried before, so I'll just ask again. Amy, did you want to unmute and ask a question? And perhaps we can come back to you, but or Jerry, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
There's also Ethan Sachs who posed a question, and if he wants to unmute, I reminded him of his question in the chat. Otherwise, we could pose it. Ethan, would you like to unmute? Joanne, would you like to pose the question?
Sure, I'm going to go ahead. Ethan's just said he's having audio issues, so I'm going to ask his question for him. It said, what language or tactic have you found that's best for trying to nudge a student towards a healthier relationship with social media in terms of time and oversharing without having them tune out the message as it's coming from a parent?
This is where I hope the artifacts of these documentaries, of Social Dilemma, of Childhood 2.0, of the resources on our website, just like can be helpful. That is one of the advantages that I bring. So I'm just not a parent or teacher, and I can say, look, here's how some of this stuff was designed. And you make your own decisions with that. You definitely have a harder time being a parent. But so yeah, check out those documentaries as starting points. Check out the resources on the website. Check out the My Social Truth stories there, and I will use that as the conversation starting point. But yeah, it's a tougher job as a parent for sure.
Yes, we will be sharing with everybody again. The website, the Center for Humane Technology has quite a bit of resources for parents, and we will share that with everybody and have it in the newsletter and get it out so that everybody can look at that as well. Dina, do you know where I am?
So on Amy's questions, you'll see two from Amy.
Okay, let's see.
Right under Ethan's question.
Yeah, I just got scrolled down. So let me find, here we go. In your view, what is the relationship between the number of hours spent in front of a computer screen per day and scholarly rigor? Do you need more hours to get a better education? Is there any scientific basis to believe that periods of rest and time away from screens affect student learning either positively or negatively? I think again, we're all concerned because our students are high schools are closed. So all their schooling is on the screen, and then they're using the screen also for their social life. So, I think that's basically where our heads are.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to think about it in terms of like just life activities, exercise, socializing, nutrition. Like, are we getting those things, or a screen taking away from them? There's very little evidence that would suggest that screen time like improves academic learning or results. Feels like common sense to me that like breaks and all the things that make a human thrive would be improving for all different categories of life, including learning. I'm not familiar with specific research that states it, but I am familiar that like the research I've seen around screens and learning, it's like you would think that with this magical technology, you would have massive results and improved outcomes, and we haven't seen that yet.
Thank you. We have a couple questions.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
The last comment in the chat is rest of Amy's questions.
Oh, did I miss it?
No, just scroll all the way down. The last one.
Okay. I was looking at, I see some, I'm not there because I was opened up some of the other questions. Yeah.
So do you have any ideas for teachers who may wish to find ways to get their students to engage with the world in a way that does not involve looking at the screen? Maybe tactile, interacting with nature, and where would they go to try something new, for inspiration?
I mean, I guess just one way of thinking about it could very well be just like recognizing how exhausting the screen can be and then assigning activities that are off of it. It will really depend on the subject and things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, like, I think it's a great idea to try and encourage that. And I think students would be very grateful to receive it, especially now when so many things are on screens. I'm seeing questions come in the questions tab here as well.
Yeah. Do you want me to read them to you? I see. Yeah, there's one here about esports, professional gaming. Students know about these tournaments and how lucrative they are. Would you say that esports is a motivation or a motivator? Sorry.
Yeah, like if they're really incredible at gaming, like they could in theory make lots and lots of money doing this. Like, it is a career that could happen. I would say if that is a route that your child is going down, it becomes even more important of like, what are their offline habits? Because both for social media influencers and e-gamers, like once that's your life in so many of the ways, I've very rarely met any of the people who do that and felt like they knew how to look me in the eye and have a conversation, or just like having those other like life skills. So I think just if that is going to be the path, it's like, one, are they actually good enough, or is that just sort of an excuse and like they're spending all of their time doing that and sort of wasting away in other opportunities? And then if that really is going to be a path for them, like, can we really double down on those other skills, those human skills and human interactions and self-awareness and outside time and exercise, because so much of your life is going to be behind a screen.
Thank you. I'll read another one from the chat. It's saying, does the Center for Humane Technology, do you work with schools to create prevention or intervention programs, work with counseling offices? Is there any work being done directly with schools?
I mean, like, I try to speak to students and spark awareness. It's really like, it's definitely early stages for me in terms of like, what are the exact continuing on programs and outcomes. I'm starting to think that like an AA type structure of support groups of like just constant ongoing conversation of here's what I'm dealing with and here's what we're trying and this is working and this isn't, is what is needed. I don't have that up and running right now. I hope to eventually. But yeah, it's just like ongoing. I have plenty of people saying of like, okay, they try this and deleting it and that helps and the awareness helps. It's really hard to find long-term solutions that are helpful, because it's about their real lives, it's about their real problems. It's about finding the triggers, the reasons they're going on these in the first place. And that's no small undertaking.
For sure. And this question, I think, really hits home again. If you had a child in high school, what would be your social media strategy for your child? What platforms, again, would you allow and how would you manage them? Like, I know you talked about some that you feel are better at the beginning. I think people would like to hear the ones that you feel are better for the communication, less problematic.
And so okay, so we're in high school, so I wouldn't have given them anything up until high school for sure. And then so then in high school, depending on what their interests were and what they wanted to use it for, if they're an artist and are trying to use social media to like push and promote, I would do that with lots of conversations about, hey, are you creating this because you actually want to? Are you creating this because it gets likes? How is this influencing your art? How is this influencing your creative process? Okay, like you want to share, you want to talk to friends across countries. Are you doing that? I would be like setting time limits and working with them to try and set their own and create their own time limits, because and like understanding a lot of what these mental health costs are for a lot of people and how this is impacting the rest of your life. I'd be in constant, like in a lot of conversation about it. And then in terms of platforms, like I would give all like I guess in the high school age, I would be giving all the warnings, especially, but high school could be 14 too. End of high school versus beginning of high school would be different. Once they're in like junior, senior year, I would in the house want to be like having that in conversation of, okay, you're going to be on this, let's talk about it together. But for 14 and 15, I would still be trying to delay off Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok, and be like asking them to turn off autoplay for YouTube, and Discord I would be okay with, and that's how I would approach it. And there might be conversations or battles that would cause me to change my mind on what they're using that for, depending on their interests and how they're using it. But that would be my most general answer.
And I just have one question before we end here about Google and Google Groups. I mean, some people have questions about Google and its large predominance, because we use it for classroom work, and then kids use it for their email. Plus there's just so much that Google controls right now, and searches. Like, is there anything that you feel about Google that we should know? Or for the most part,
I'm less concerned about privacy than most people are. Like most people in my field are. There's a lot of that talk. It's just not really my biggest concern. I'm much more concerned with the attention steering and what it's doing to our mental health and sense of the world. But like YouTube is where I'm most concerned about Google. They're sure, if you're concerned about privacy, I get it. And DuckDuckGo is an alternative. It's just not as concerning to me. I feel like there's already just so much out there, and it's tough to manage.
Thank you so much. I mean, I really think that, we at school are really concerned lately about mental health. We're concerned about the social emotional learning of the students, and how that's been so challenging during the pandemic. And I know that, social media, as you said, can play a role in that we need to be aware of. So I really want to thank you for coming to speak to us tonight. It's been wonderful to have you answer questions for our community. And I thank you on behalf of Stuyvesant. I'll let, I think our PA president, Dina, say goodnight, but thank you.
I think I just want to convey that our principal, who you didn't get to meet, Max, is paying attention on YouTube all throughout your presentation, and he just wanted to extend a thank you to the Parental Association and to you for presenting such a great presentation tonight.
Thank you, Max.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, huge thank you. And Dina, Joanne, thank you so much for bringing this program in, organizing this talk. We really appreciate it. We know, I mean, it definitely opens a lot of good conversations, and that's exactly what we need. I think that's a good start. So on that note, we would like to thank everyone and wish everyone a great good night, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Good night.
Good night. Oh,